you do the SummerSlam match, and by November, Davey Boy's gone, and by that point, you're the WWF champion. How much of this Wembley match that you put together do you think made Vince decide to put the WWF title on you 2 months later?
I think it was. I mean, I hate to say that I planned it because I know I didn't, but I mean, I was like, it's like the fact that that I went to Vince and offered to drop the title to Shawn or Davey Boy prematurely because I didn't know that I was losing. It's not like they came in and said, you're losing the title. It was like I was one of the only guys I know of that ever went in and said, I have an idea, and the idea is not going to help me, but it's going to help somebody else, and that's pretty rare in wrestling. But I knew. I just had this sense about it that my timing. I know at that time, I don't know that I was the biggest star in Canada, and I don't know that I was the biggest star here in the United States. I was an up-and-comer, but I don't, guys like Hogan and Warrior and Macho Man were the big wheels in those days. But I know in England and in Germany and a lot of the other markets like India, and I was the guy for some reason. People loved the way I wrestled, and they weren't Hulk Hogan guys. They were Bret Hart guys, and I could sense a shift coming in the business. That was, if you told somebody that at the time in a car riding to the town or something, they'd think you were nuts. Like this guy's so full of himself. He thinks, But I really did have a hunch that things were changing and that I was in a good place at the right time, and this was a chance for me to push and get the break that maybe would open a big door for me, and that's all it happened. I knew. It's kind of funny, but when I got told I was winning the title, it was in Saskatoon. I remember when Vince McMahon called me in the room and they sat me on a floor. I thought they were going to fine me or I was in trouble. They told me the night before, they said, you got to get on the plane tomorrow morning, because I was in my hometown, and I was wrestling in a town about 80 miles out of Calgary called Red Deer. And they came up to me and said, Vince wants to see you first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock. I'm like, 8 o'clock in the morning? I got to get up at 6 to get there. And he's like, he goes, you're booked for you land at 8, and whatever it was. I just was like, you're so tired for a TV taping when you got to get up at 6 in the morning, and then you got to be at the building all day, and then you got to wrestle that night. So I wasn't too happy about going. I remember trying to get out of it, and he goes, you have to go, and Vince wants to see you as soon as you get there. Don't miss your flight. And he made me think that I was in trouble, when in fact it's like they're going to tell me this big news that they're going to put the belt on me. But so I remember I got to the building, and I guess Rick was in Vince's office getting the news that they were going to drop the belt that night. And I just remember watching Vince and Rick exited out of Vince's office. It was a big, long hallway. And Vince had a little room somewhere in about the middle of the hallway. And I saw Rick get out, and Rick made a right turn and never even saw me. I was at the other end of the hall. He just made a right turn and walked down the hall. And I was like, Ric Flair's meeting Vince. Like, I didn't connect that either. And then Vince waves at me and gives me the fingers to come down. I come down and sits me down, and I'm like, what's up? Like, what's going on? And he goes, we've tried to do a lot of things with you in the territory, since you've come here. He goes, didn't we put the tag belts on you? I go, yeah, we put the tag belts on you. And then he goes, then we put the Intercontinental on you. And I go, yeah, you put the Intercontinental on me. And he goes, so we've kind of done everything that we can do with you. So anyway, he started talking like he was going to fire me. And I remember sitting there because I knew my dad. I was actually in Saskatoon that day. It was the advertised match that my dad, I think, was handcuffed to Jerry Lawler in the corner or something like that. I can't remember what the storyline was, but my dad was being flown out to Saskatoon to be handcuffed to somebody in my corner. And I thought as he was I remember it's like, sounds like he's going to fire me. Like, it's like, so we've kind of done everything we can think of with you. So, and it was, I could sense, I remember looking at him and going, you son of a bitch, you're going to fire me right now, and my dad's flying in to be handcuffed to, I remember I was like, I just sat there because, the truth is that's exactly how they are. They are that cold-blooded, and that's how Vince and all of them are. It's all business, and they don't give a shit whether you feel bad or not. And I remember I could feel my blood raising, and I was like, I remember going, just keep your cool, because when he fires you, just don't sell it, And I really thought he was going to fire me. And then suddenly he goes, so that's why we're going to put the belt on you tonight, the big one. And I was like, I didn't even sell it. I just looked at him and said, okay. And he goes, and he looks at me like I'm kind of weird, strange. And he goes, you're the first guy that never reacted. Everybody I've ever told that to, when I told them that they were going to win the belt, they usually jumped around the room, or they were so excited and like jubilant. But for me, it was like you pulled the rug out from underneath me for so many years. Like every time you promise me something, it never happens. And you tell me at 8 o'clock in the morning in Saskatoon that I'm winning the world title tonight. It's like, I don't see it. I don't believe it till it happens. And when I see it happen, then I'll be happy. Then I'll jump around my room. But that's how it was. I didn't believe till I won it that I was going to win it. And once I won it, I was never going to give it up. Even if I lost it.
My last question about Davey Boy is, years later in 1995, you guys main event an In Your House pay-per-view in December of 95. This time, Davey Boy's a heel, you're the babyface. When you guys were going into that, and it's such a different match, there's all the blood in it, were you guys going into it thinking, we need to make this completely different from the SummerSlam match?
Well, I love my match with Davey at Wembley so much, and it was such a historical match. Like people, 30 years later still remember it, with a lot of emotion and stuff. And what was your question?
You guys had the match in your house in December of 95.
So the In Your House match, I got the title from Kevin Nash, Diesel, and it's like right away out of the no, Davey had just turned heel, I think, right? And my sister Diana was, I don't know what she was doing, trying to become a heel or trying to get into the storyline of somehow, which I didn't like. I didn't want that. I wasn't keen on that idea so much, but with Davey, it was. I remember going, there's so much pressure on us to have as good a match as what we had at Wembley. And then I'm like trying to think about it, and I'm like, how can I have this match with Davey? Because Davey's a heel now, and I'm the baby face. Whereas in England, it worked so well because I could be a baby face heel. Like I could blur the line between a heel and a baby face. I could cheat all the way through the match with Davey, and as long as I put him over at the end of it, they'd still love me in England, and I knew that, and that's exactly what happened. But with Davey and as a heel going into that In Your House pay-per-view, this is just my opinion, but Davey was not a very good heel. He just didn't look like a heel, kind of like John Cena. I don't think John Cena could have ever been a heel, and you can argue maybe that he could have been a great villain in wrestling. I don't see it. Davey was exactly the same. Babyface forever. Just didn't have the look of being a heel, didn't talk like a heel. And his wrestling was, he did headlocks and press slams and power slams and body slams and strongman stuff, but he didn't really cheat, ever. Even as a bad guy, Davey was always like a lousy bad guy. He never maybe pull your hair, and that's about all he did. It's like, to be a good bad guy, you got to cheat and be a total out there. And Davey just wasn't in his nature, wasn't in his sort of wrestling character, wasn't a very good villain. So in wrestling, the reality of wrestling is that the bad guy or the heel controls the tempo of the match. I mean, you can't be a good babyface unless you have a fantastic heel. Like if you have a heel that can, make you mad and get the fans mad, then you can have a great match. But with Davey, I remember kind of struggling about it and thinking like, we could do lots of moves and lots of stuff, but it's headlocks and body slams and head scissors and stuff. It's not a heel match. And I remember it's like realizing going into the match with Davey that this was going to be a problem because Davey was not a very good heel, and we're not going to be able. There's not going to be a. We're not going to be able to tell a very good story, and I really struggled with it and struggled, and basically I drew a blank for days and days and days, and it's like I'm trying to think. To give you an idea, the In Your House match with Davey, I think there's about 10 or 15 minutes just before the blood comes. That would have been the match because that's all I had. Like I pieced together a bunch of little moves, and we had about 10, 12 minutes worth of mostly babyface wrestling. And they tried to do things. My sister Diana was out there, but she wasn't a heel either. And I just know that I was driving to the building in Hershey Park, Pennsylvania, where the pay-per-view was taking place, and I remember thinking, like actually stressing out and going, this match is going to stink. It's going to be one of the worst matches of my career, and it's going to be a real mark against me because I couldn't deliver with Davey, and we delivered such a great match at Wembley, and we are just not going to deliver today, and it's going to be a stink out. And I remember feeling almost like like it's hopeless. There's nothing I can do to make this match better. And then I saw a pharmacy as we were driving to the Hershey Park Arena. And I remember thinking, blood, razor blades, old school. But I just remember thinking, blood would totally change this whole match. Suddenly would make it very interesting. And so I pulled into the drugstore and bought some necessary tools to bring blood in the match. And I got to the building and I told Davey, I said, this is what we're doing. And I started telling Davey the match. And I was just the only ones that knew what the blood were me and Davey. Not even the referee knew, not even nobody, not even Jim Cornette, who was managing Davey with a tennis racket. He didn't know about the blood. If you ever watch that match when Jim Cornette sees all the blood everywhere, he's like about ready to have a heart attack. He couldn't believe it. And at that time, we weren't allowed to have blood in the matches, nor with Steve Austin. We weren't allowed to have blood in matches then either. But I remember going, we need the blood in this match because this match is nothing without it. And we did the whole first part of the match, which would have been the match, period. And it is until the blood comes that suddenly the match just comes to life. And then the rest of it is all stuff that we did after because the blood changed the whole tempo of the match. And that's why I love that match almost as much as the one I had at Wembley because it's just such a beautiful story and it's so carefully done. And there's a lot of moves in there that nobody's ever done, I've never done before. I used to always try to do in almost every one of my big matches, I always try to do one move or one spot or one sequence of moves that I've never done ever before where someone can go, I've never seen that before. And, if you watch a lot of my matches back, there's little things in there that are first-time things that really went well, and I always was proud of them for creating them. But in the match with Davey at the In Your House, when I was climbing in the ring, and I think Davey was on the floor, and I was covered in blood, and I just climbed up the ropes and sprung backwards and dropped down on top of him, and Davey caught me in the air, and then running power slammed me on the cement or on the padded floor, and then he pulled the cement back or the pad from the floor so that I'd be on the cement and all that. But it was just brilliant stuff. I mean, that I don't think anybody's ever done before, and I don't know that anybody's ever done it since. But it was all stuff that was fresh, like brand new stuff. Anyone watching, any wrestler anywhere would go, I've never seen that before. And that's what I like to pride myself on, is doing stuff that nobody ever seen before or nobody expected it to happen. And sometimes you can cherry pick little things from wrestling matches you've seen over your lifetime and pull something that hasn't been seen and done for many, many years and do it in a match where it's like, wow, that was really good. And then, I was lucky enough being the son of a wrestler in a wrestling promotion, and my dad was put on some of the great wrestlers, like every world champion worked in Calgary, from Luthez to Gene Kiniski to Dory Funk to Bruno Sammartino. Everybody worked there. it was a good place. It was a good wrestling place to go because people love wrestling in Calgary. They like the good, hard wrestling match, and that's what they got there. But I think being a guy that grew up in the wrestling business, a kid, and a guy that watched wrestling all my life, I really got to understand wrestling and the psychology. Whether I didn't learn algebra in school or anything. I was always lousy in math, but I knew my wrestling when I was 7 years old. I probably knew more about wrestling than some wrestlers know today. I'm almost guaranteed that I know more about wrestling than, but I think, and I'll just say this, is that the greatest wrestlers we're always wrestling fans first. Like, I was a real fan. Like, I used to get pretty excited just before the matches on Friday. It was every Friday night in my hometown. But I got out of school on Friday. I transformed into a completely different person going to the wrestling matches. I loved wrestling. I loved watching each match and grading different guys. And I want to see this guy versus that guy. And I want to see the two masked guys wrestle. And I want to see which one loses his mask. And I was a real fan. I loved wrestling. And a lot of times when I think about my wrestling matches, I'm sitting in the front row and I'm going, what do I want to see Bret Hart and Steve Austin do? And that's how I look at my wrestling matches. Like, this is what I think I would like to see. If I was a fan, I'd like to see Bret Hart and Steve Austin start out from the very beginning. They start fighting and they go on the floor, and then you start to piece the whole movie together. And that's why I think I had a bit of an edge over a lot of the guys in the business. I had a great mind for wrestling all my life.